Hi, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the first policy committee meeting of the new school year. We will start with a roll call. Ms. Murphy.
Robin Murphy, present.
Daniel Schultz, present.
Pam Henry, present.
Ross Whiting, present.
Mia Woodstein, present.
Zachary Epps, present. Charles Riddell Williams, present.
And Jennifer Lowman, present. Next, we move on to the approval of the minutes of the May 21st, 2025 policy committee meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Sir, approved. And now we'll move on to old business.
So the two items of old business, 121 and 121.1, are the field trips and other student travel policies and ARs. Those were carryovers from last school year. There have been no changes since the first reading. They've been on a few board agendas for repeat first readings. But I think there was some discussion last school year, and they're ready for adoption if there's no further questions about them.
Thank you, Mr. Gassio. First, I will go to the board. And the board members have.
I do have just a few comments, questions. One is if you can scroll down to maybe it's an AR question. I'm not sure where this belongs.
I think it's the AR. I think it's the AR.
Yeah. I had two just sort of questions, concerns about deciding when a child would not be eligible to participate in a field trip. And it looked like there was, if a parent, guardian, or teacher felt that a child would not be a good fit. I don't know what the exact wording is, but that it would be run by the principal. And I just wanted a little bit of clarification on that. Like, are we just saying the principals are responsible for deciding if kids are or are not permitted to join a field trip? That's sort of my first question. And my other question is, there's nothing in here that details like specific inclusion, like that when a field trip is created, children are not barred from attending based on academics or behavioral requirements.
So that isn't, well, the one about the children are, it's number 5 in the AR. If a parent, guardian, or teacher believes it would not be in the best interest, that's the AR.
The school principal should be consulted.
Right, and should be communicated in writing.
Right. So that's okay. So that's just, I just put that out to just confirm, like, is the principal who's responsible for that final decision?
Yeah, I mean, the principal is generally responsible for the building, so usually that would be the case.
Thank you. That to me
Was that is this a response to this? Because I don't know if you had that.
it's related to what you said,
Okay.
but if you had more.
No, it was just those two.
Yeah, to me, that addressed your first question, but your second comment was actually not about who's responsible for making a decision, but rather from a values and intent perspective of a policy, not the AR. We do not want students to be barred from participation in field trips to academic contributions, unless there's a safety concern. That was my understanding.
Yeah.
The second question.
Yes.
This as written would not make such a statement in the AR or the policy level. And so as a result, it would be adherent to policy for a principal to say, we're only allowing students to go on the 4th grade celebratory field trip if they showed growth in both math and reading standardized tests, which I'm not sure is actually what we as a district would like to see, because we know from a PBI's lens, students who are left out of that kind of activity because of academic reasons are demoralized and recognized by their peers as being left out, and then that becomes a stigma associated with them. So I just wanted to sort of maybe double down on your second point, less as a question and more as one board member. I would like to see us explore what appropriate language that isn't inappropriately restricted, but is very clear what our values as a district are when it comes to.
Thank you. Chair Schultz, Lucy, any other comments from any or questions from any other board members?
Separate, I wanted to say that in the context of Ms. Blitzstein, but a separate question around inclusion is when it comes to cost. And so I don't know, I know we have two policies, which we're about to talk about, and actually maybe I should start by asking the difference between 121 and 121.1. But things like high school field trips, senior trips, etc. I know that last year we had a particularly expensive one, and my understanding is that for some students it may have been prohibitively expensive. And similarly, I think whether in an AR or whether in a policy we have a statement of values that we would like to see a policy that would be as inclusive as possible from an economic perspective. That's another set of language that we belong.
So I think, policy 121 is meant to address trips that are part of the planned instruction for the course, right? So they are an extension of what's being taught in the classroom. They're not generally trips that are associated with extracurriculars or sometimes like the purely celebratory trips, senior trips, things like that usually don't fall under the field trip policy. They would fall under 121.1. So to that point, because field trips are part of the approved planned instruction, they inherently do include everyone, right? Because you're not excluding anyone from, just like you wouldn't exclude someone from coming to school. You're not allowed to do that, right? Now, there are times when, because a child might present a safety or a risk of safety for themselves or others, where it's not appropriate to have the child in that setting. But as a general matter, it would be inappropriate for a principal to say, if you aren't showing growth in language arts, you don't need to go on a field trip, because the field trip is part of the planned instruction, right? So I think on 121, I think it's essentially covered, or it's covered not directly, but indirectly. 121 is sort of a catch-all policy to address any other student travel outside of the travel that we 121.1, correct, sorry, misspoke there. So that is anything other than travel where, for example, all of the third grade classes go to this location for the US history classes go to this location for the trip. Any other travel, it's sort of an undefined, it's undefined in scope, because this policy can become applicable in many different situations, right? They could be trips that happen over long break periods if students are traveling abroad. They could be trips that are associated with extracurriculars. They could be trips, as I mentioned before, that are sort of those celebratory events, like at the end of your high school time in high school, things like that. Anything that's travel, not part of a field trip. And because of the variety of trips that could fall under 121.1, that's why you don't see as many specifics as you do with 121. I get the numbers wrong there. I get it now.
Dr. Savage had a comment.
Hi, good evening. I hope everyone can hear me.
Yes.
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure that I commented about the field trips because we do have a protocol in place where the field trip packets actually are approved by the Office of the Assistant Superintendent as well. And we ensure that if it is a field trip, that it is aligned educationally with where the students are in terms of the scope and sequence. If it is a PBIS trip, the PBIS trips are behavioral in nature in that they are part of our positive behavior support system, and students actually earn through a token economy system points or dollars, well, children's dollars, in order to actually participate in those trips, but they also do school-wide trips. So I just wanted to make sure that we delineated between the two. We also ensure that all field trips are compliant with our other policies as a district. So obviously, we have policies around non-discrimination, special education, and inclusion, and students are not excluded for any reason.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions, board members? I just wanted to just touch back on the cost of the trip issue a little bit. And make sure, especially for those trips that are kind of in the course of instruction, that they are not costing children sort of out of, or families out of pocket dollars. Or what are, if, you know, or do we need to sort of spell that out, or does this depend on the trip, or I'm not sure how we work that.
I'd be happy to answer that question as well. We do actually have within our budget money set aside to subsidize or pay for field trips for students who are free and reduced lunch or whose families have demonstrated that they cannot afford to pay the cost associated with certain field trips because field trips do cost for students in some circumstances. For example, the cost of entrance into a museum or the cost of perhaps, a ticket to a particular event. And we have on our field trip slips and within that packet delineated where families can indicate that moving forward. We're also working with the Cheltenham Education Foundation to establish a scholarship fund for field trips for this purpose. So we are trying to make sure that all students have access regardless of cost. And we definitely ask those questions as we are reviewing the requests for field trips and the field trip packets and just the general list of field trips that schools have scheduled for the purposes of education over the course of the school year.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Savage, for that explanation. That's helpful. Any other questions, comments?
I guess a follow-up question primarily around the second, but I guess slightly related to the first is those sound like excellent practices, but I don't necessarily see them codified in either the administrative regulation or the policy, which to me raises the question of is there a reason not to, at whichever the appropriate level, depending on the subject. First, again, not for everything that was described, I understand that would be flexible, but for instance, the cost in particular saying, hey, as a district, we are intentional about evaluating whether students with financial needs require additional support, and we want to make sure that is clearly
Go to in 121, number 4, right?
AR.
Yeah, scroll down to number 4. We do have language in there about
shall not be wonderful.
access
Yes.
costs.
Okay.
So I've been looking for that.
Thank you. That covers it.
So
Sorry
I
for
think
missing it.
that piece is covered.
Okay.
And similarly, there's a policy also in the 100 series, I think it's 110 or 111, with instructional supplies. Similarly, if students couldn't afford instructional supplies, there's also a process to go through.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Thank you. And I want to apologize. I was not at the May 21st meeting where these policies were discussed. So that's probably also why I have. All right, I think we're good.
Yeah.
Yep, thank you. On to new business.
Right, we can go to,
Business will go for adoption for both 121 and 121.1.
Thank you.
102.
Oh, actually, I'm sorry, I have just one random question about field trips. This used to come up when I was involved with the PTO. Who pays for the bus transportation for the field trips? When I was with the PTO, we used to pay for the trip. We used to pay for the bus transportation.
so I know there is some language in the contract with Cheltenham Trans that they provide transportation for a certain number of trips. There's a section of the contract that talks about field trips. So ultimately, the district, is the payor of for Cheltenham Trans.
I was just curious because there was still a lot of back and forth about
Now,
that.
not all field trips necessarily use Cheltenham transportation, but I know,
Yeah,
I imagine a lot of them do.
Seven five, this would shall provide transportation to and from destination.
We've actually seen that done a number of different ways over the course of the past year that I've been here. Sometimes the cost of the bus is actually distributed across the fees that students are actually paying to participate in the field trip. Sometimes we find sponsors for the buses, such as PTOs or outside organizations. And sometimes the schools actually cover the buses themselves out of their own school budget. We also have had circumstances where, we've paid for school buses out of the central office budget. I think the most interesting thing about this is the cost of transportation has gone up and is increasing over time because a field trip bus is a separate fee from the typical, contract that we have for our regular transportation. So I think there's multiple aspects to it. And as we have been going through the revision of the protocols associated with this, we've also gotten better about budgeting for buses prospectively. So we do have a separate line item to cover buses or when we have issues with anybody, including families, being able to contribute for buses. We now have a bucket of money within the school budget to pay for those moving forward as necessary.
Or do we need to spell that out in the AR?
I don't think it has to be spelled out. I think this gives us the flexibility. The district provides the transportation, however that works on a trip-by-trip basis is fine.
thank you, Dr. Savage for that. I thought it was a little bit more complicated than met the eye in terms of how sometimes this transportation actually got paid for. So thank you for that explanation.
No problem at all.
All right, now we can go on to new business.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we have a number of items for new business. First one is 102. This was just minor revisions to reflect the new academic standards that are for the Commonwealth. Questions there?
Dr. Whiting.
It looks like science was added to 3 and 4.
Yes, so grades K to 5, first bucket. And
Got it. It's grade by grade level. Thank
6
you.
to 12.
I missed that part.
Yep.
Helpful.
And I believe with respect to world language, I'm going to lean on Dr. Savage here. I think that there was a discussion last year that removing this as a required academic standard was going to provide pathways to graduation where there were obstacles previously. I'll leave it general at that and let the experts talk about specifics if it's helpful.
I actually did have it.
So at least three.
Yeah, but yeah,
Yeah.
we had several people here who I think had the same question, which is why it worked.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that last part.
That's okay. On the list of subjects for which academic standards will be developed or content areas, world language is struck out.
Yes, and I think that's a larger conversation and question for the board. And we might need to clarify the difference between this policy around academic standards and the policy relating to graduation requirements. There are a number of different standards that are set by the Pennsylvania Department of Education, including world language standards. But I think the real question is, do we actually want to continue to utilize world language as part of that graduation requirement piece or not? And whether the board would like us to continue to reinforce academic standards through 102, even if the graduation requirement of world language is removed from the graduation requirement policy at a later date and time.
And we can leave the world language in until we bring the graduation requirements policy back. That may be the best way to address it, since the graduation requirements policy isn't on the agenda. That's probably at this point the best way to proceed, unless the board wants to have graduation requirements policy come back at the next meeting. And we can have sort of a joint discussion.
Okay, it's got several people peering my way. I think I saw Ms. Blitzy first.
I guess my first question is world language, I know that there is currently a language requirement for graduation. Is there a state requirement for world language for graduation?
No.
No. That is very interesting to me. I mean, as one person, I would rather keep it personally. I think that it aids in communicating with other people, and our job is to help our students become well-rounded participants of society, and that's just my personal thought about leaving that in. I would rather keep it. And I'm happy to say keep it until we circle back to graduation requirements.
Sure.
Also, kick the can a little to keep it in for now. That's just my thought.
The world language is also a vocabulary. We don't have any background. Sets of words that you cannot use, which I think is unfortunate. It is not put in place there, so I agree.
Okay. That's fine. We'll leave it in. Graduation requirements policy.
Would like to say?
Yeah,
It's just more so timing the comment, right? If what we're planning to do is to bring it back to greater conversation about graduation requirements, then I want to make sure that we were using our time wisely. We don't have on our agenda today because I've got a lot of words, which I normally do. But just most specifically for me, it's just understanding the relationship between removing it and pathways to graduation. Like I just did, is it easier? Like what is it? Like what are we saying? There's a greater conversation, and that's why I said this is table this,
Yeah.
because it's not even just around the courses. It's around credits, we've got several things that we need to really conversation.
And I also have an additional curiosity because this speaks to academic standards, but I think my team and I would benefit from this policy clearly delineating the difference between local academic standards and what it is that we should be developing as a district in terms of attainment versus state or core standards. Because obviously in this list, there are a number of courses that we teach that have state and core standards that we are aligned to, but we might not have a local academic standards for. And I am also curious as to whether or not the board wants us to even have local academic standards, because obviously if we choose to teach what is not delineated or specifically said by Pennsylvania's Department of Education, that should be dictated to us through the governance mechanism of the board and not a decision that exists at the school by school, teacher by teacher, principal by principal basis.
Yeah, that makes sense. I will point out that this policy does define academic standards to encompass the Pennsylvania core standards. So I guess the question is, I think what I hear you asking is, do we sort of want to tease out kind of what if any standards the district itself might want to establish and have folks follow. But my understanding when I just read this fairly quickly was that this was really talking about making sure that the district was establishing standards in line with the core standards.
Correct.
Okay.
That's right. So it sounds like the committee's okay moving this forward, but retaining the world language. I think the remainder of the revision should proceed.
Yes, I think that's fine. I do,
Yep.
but it seems like there are several other questions
Sure.
that come out of this, some related to language, some not. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, then 212.
So, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Procedurally, are we holding this or are we moving it forward?
I think we're moving it forward for a first
Okay.
read, yeah.
Oh, and then bring it back with
It'll
the
come
other
back.
policy
We
in the
can,
next
yeah.
meeting.
Well,
Right.
October meeting will include the graduation requirements conversation, is that when?
That's.
Great, okay, check it for understanding.
Although I would caution us to make sure that we don't conflate the discussion about standards with the graduation requirements, right? I
Right.
mean, I think we need to keep that, make sure we're keeping those separate. Okay, thank you, Mr. Diazio.
all right, then we have 212, which is assessment and reporting of student progress. I don't believe there were any changes to the policy except for some formatting of the cross references that we did at the bottom of the document. The change here was in the AR with respect to moving the elementary schools from trimesters to 3 trimesters to 4 department periods.
Any questions or comments from the board? Mr. Schultz?
A very minor question, which is, I know that in a lot of our policies, we have over the past 8 years been shifting away from parents to parents/guardians or more inclusive language. There's one thing that we have not shifted away from, which is parent-teacher conferences versus caregiver-teacher conferences. Just want to identify that, not necessarily proposing it as like a threat of change right now. I recognize it's probably a deeper change, but I just want to mention.
Oh, thank you.
I'm also open to, like, if it's easy to change, great, but I also recognize
Yeah.
it might be not an overnight policy shift, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, right for that. It's quite timely we're considering this. I think we received an email yesterday from a parent around just this topic, right? Accessing and reporting on student progress. So, I don't think they're here, but it would be great, right? In terms of talking about things that our parents talk about as well. But this, it got me thinking as well. I know we have a lot of, like, there's some data and link it that parents can access, things like that. But it seems like if you don't know it's there, then you know, it's just there. So I'm wondering, this is less of a policy thing, more of an, I guess more of an implementation question. But I know a lot of the efforts right now, I think we're doing some common assessment work in terms of curriculum. And so I know last year there was some communication around what parents might receive from Linkit. And so I think this might be another time where, you know, what's in Linkit, what might be there, what's already there, how can we access it? Might be an opportunity to reach out to parents, caregivers, family members.
So Doc, do you want to elaborate on where we are with that and what our next steps are going to be moving forward?
Sure, I'd be happy to. On the school district's website, we actually have just re-envisioned the landing page for the Office of Education. And on that landing page, we now have our instructional framework as well as our district assessment philosophy and our district assessment calendar for this upcoming school year. Part of the request for the change within this policy is around alignment, because the way the report card conferences have landed on the academic calendar, there is a conflict between the elementary report cards and the secondary report cards. And parents actually are receiving reports of progress for their elementary school students after their first report card conference period, and it is resulting in some consternation for families. So we have actually been trying to share more information out front with families by placing it onto the website. Things are available in PowerSchool and Link It now that we have the parent portal open for everyone K to 12. And I think our next major step is really a communications campaign to ensure that families know that all of this information is publicly available and that we will be adding additional information, including a curriculum blueprint that we are finishing up, information that is specific to schools. I'm sure the board has noticed that we have updated student handbooks. We have also updated employee handbooks. And we have been trying to build a bit more consistency across all of the school districts' websites, as well as across all of our schools' protocols and procedures around grading protocols, grading guidelines, and reporting periods.
Yeah, I
Thank you.
appreciate that level of detail. And then to your point, the policy does kind of speak specifically to report cards. And then I think a lot of what I was talking about is like other stuff. And so it's it sounds like 212 AR, the way you are, I guess, implementing this 212 AR is encompassing of all of the, like what you said, the PowerSchool, the Link It, like whatever way they can get it. It seems like you're thinking of it that way, even though this policy is really focused on like report cards, and when those report cards are focused on, there's going to be other points, it seems like, that you're talking about data and student progress as well. So
To your point, you raised an email that was sent to the board recently. So that response was more so addressing the email, because the email wasn't specifically just around report card progress, right? So I simply want Doc to explain to you, while I have you guys as a full board, what the initiatives look like that were being referenced or questioned by that single parent, and why we know that we need to get a communication out, which puts a nice bow on it, which explains all of what we're doing to address PSSA, the data scores and curriculum and,
yeah,
you know, so.
And I applaud that. So and I guess my question boils down to, would that be reflected somewhere else, or would that technically be in here to 12?
No, that would not be in here.
That would be somewhere else.
Yeah.
Okay. And I guess I'll leave it at that.
So, yeah, this is, we're just trying to get alignment right now.
Yeah.
This is specifically talking about, yes.
And then I got it.
Gotcha.
Any other questions or comments from the board about policy or AR 12? I just had one comment or suggestion, maybe, when we list the district assessments shall include, you know, the various assessment, strategies. Again, this may not be the place for, but included in this list are diagnostic assessments. I was also wondering, I know we talked some about, formative assessments and summative assessments and those other types of assessments. Could those be included and defined here as well, or would that happen somewhere else, or is that not necessary to be in a policy?
Well, I actually think that this language around assessment of student progress should say something along the lines of which may include any of or all of the following, and is not limited to. Because this is, you're absolutely correct. This is a list, but the actual district assessment calendar and the district assessment philosophy talk about the difference between a formative, a summative, a benchmark, a high stakes test. And that information is available to the public, and we give very specific examples of what we are using in each of those categories and when we are testing students within those categories, purposefully, because we wanted to make sure that we were educating the public around the difference between a formative and a summative assessment and what that's going to look like for your student, what they're going to bring home. All of that, it does exist in the website as well. I don't see the delineation in language around that as far as the categories of assessments here in this policy, but we do absolutely capture these different types of assessments within our district assessment philosophy.
Okay, thank you.
So I added the language, but shall not be.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay, moving on.
Right, so next is 904. The committee may remember a number of months ago, last school year, we had updated all of the tobacco and controlled substances policy so that they all spoke the same language in terms of defined terms. This 904 is the, I believe, the last one that we need to clean up to ensure consistency. So you'll see all new language there about the definition of tobacco, which is consistent with, again, the other tobacco policies. And then there are some additional provisions, just minor updates to the document around the superintendent having the ability to designate areas where the public may attend. There was also language that was added. This was a PSBA recommended language to clarify that use and sale of tobacco products should be treated differently than possession of tobacco products. So if someone has a tobacco product in their car or even in their pocket, not a student, but an adult, that's not necessarily a violation of policy. The use of those products on school district property would be. So the new language towards the bottom of the document, right above the delegation of responsibility, is where that language is included.
Thank you, Mr. Biasio.
Yep.
Any questions or comments from the board? Mr. Schultz?
I have a clarifying question that maybe I've never been answering. The policy says public attendance in school facilities, but the purpose talks about attendance at activities and events sponsored by the district. I feel like there's a Venn diagram, and there are some examples of school-sponsored activities that don't happen in school facilities, and there are examples of events in school facilities that maybe aren't school-sponsored. For instance, if somebody pays to rent out a field or a building for an activity. Is this policy intended to cover that whole Venn diagram or just a subset?
So the use of facilities policy is the policy that would apply when outside groups come in and use your facilities. There's an application process that they go through the facilities office, and there's sort of a contract that you have to sign if you want to use district facilities. And there are terms in there around no weapons, no drugs, no alcohol, complying with all school signage that's posted in your signs. So that's how you deal with the non-school groups. This policy is intended to cover, it could just as easily say public attendance at school events. If the word facility is tripping anyone up, it's really meant to mean, or facilities is intended to mean both your buildings, but also your fields and outside spaces as well.
And theoretically, if you were like the arcade, our graduation at Arcadia, presumably that's a school sponsored event. It's not on our facilities or our grounds, but I imagine we would want these policies to apply to that event, even though it's not technically on school facilities, correct?
So certainly any of our students are bound by Cheltenham's rules when they're not here. It's an interesting question around when you're using someone else's property for a lawful use. I don't know that we have the authority to tell our people, although usually the same rule, many of the rules that we're imposing are also imposed when we're using other spaces, because usually the spaces that we're using are either municipal entities or other higher education facilities, which generally impose the same rules.
Thank you. That answers my question. Sounds like no change. Thanks.
Any other questions for us? I realized this was supposed to be, we're making this align with the other ones that I remember that we've changed related to tobacco. Is there a reason why this is so much about tobacco? And about not much about other stuff that could happen?
So there is language in here about weapons and controlled substances and things like that. It's just that the definitions for tobacco products are just so nuanced, because there's differences between use and possession for adults, and there are carve-outs for tobacco products for like tobacco cessation efforts and things like that. So the definitions, there's actually not a lot of content to them. It's just a lot of definitions and carve-outs of those definitions. It's not intended to be a tobacco
Okay,
policy.
yeah.
But what I see when you look at it,
Yeah.
a lot of the words. Yep.
Really not about tobacco these days.
But I mean, the policy talks about weapons, controlled substances, service animals, health and
It
safety.
just gets caught up in all that.
Yep.
Is Mulder?
Well, it's kind of along that same line, just wondering, because when you do look at it, it looks like a nicotine or tobacco policy. So I just wondering if the other things, do they get lost in all of that? Or I assume that if we needed to clarify the definitions of any of those, we'd be doing that. Especially like service animal versus non-service. I know that's coming up with a different policy, but it's in this.
It is.
But we'll wait.
Good.
Thank you.
All right, so next is 336. This is a new one. This was one that we didn't have before. And this is just the personal leave policy. Personal leave, and in this case, we include some bereavement leave provisions. Personal leave is governed by your collective bargaining agreements. And just like we have sick leave policies, just like we have FMLA policies, it's customary to have a policy, but then to also refer to your collective bargaining agreement. Because if you ever had employees that were not, for example, covered by any type of collective bargaining agreement or employment-related organization, you would want to have a policy that addresses what the provisions are. So with personal leave, because we can point to CBA language, we do, and we include bereavement language, which in this case is consistent with the CBAs.
So there is one change to make it consistent with CEA that I just noticed.
Yep,
In bereavement leave,
yep,
son-in-law, daughter-in-law are included with immediate family.
got it. All right. Cool. And this policy is for immediate family members. School code requires 3 days, so you're actually more generous through, through your policy. I'll make a change here. Thank you for that.
Any questions or comments from the board?
In the spirit of not making assumptions. In the note, I know there's a clause that said, the note explicitly makes it clear that this does not replace any other things, kind of the lowest on the hierarchy of rules. If there were more than one conflict, for instance, there's a bargaining agreement that says one thing, and we pass a resolution that says yet another thing, we don't have to delineate which would take precedence in this, because that would just be a legal process to determine what.
Correct, and board resolution would be for employees that are, so anyone that's represented by a union would be for the CBA. Board resolution would be, there are times when boards adopt policy just via board action that applies to non-unionized employees. But the board resolution would never contradict this.
Yeah, I guess towards the same, and I was happy to hear we're above what would be industry standard. But I guess we would have to change this whenever the CBA changes. Is there a way to modify I guess it's not burdensome, but is there a way to have the language where it's that it will never go below a certain amount, as opposed to having to change it every time you make change in the CEA?
I suspect that it's been 5 for a while, and that's generally not a provision. Like, I can't imagine that they would ever want to bargain that, because 5 is pretty generous, right?
Okay.
And we applied it also to BBC in our administrators.
Yeah,
In some ways, that is our standard. Like,
yeah,
okay,
5
yeah,
is,
yeah,
and
yeah.
now by policy and
Yeah.
by your, correct. Yeah, I mean, before there was no policy on the topic.
Yeah.
So this is now putting a floor of 5.
Okay.
Unless the
In some
board
ways.
were to change it and the CBA were to change, it's gonna be at least.
Some ways it does. Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments on 904? Or not 904, sorry.
336.
I think we're.
The next one is 339. This is an unpaid leave policy. I think the policy is definitely ready for the board to consider. The AR was in draft form and probably still needs further admin review just to ensure it's consistent with current practice. But again, also good to have an uncompensated leave policy. Uncompensated leaves are becoming more and more common as accommodations under the ADA. We're just seeing requests for unpaid leave more and more frequently. So coming up with a set of sort of baseline rules is what this policy attempts to do. So I think when we bring the policy back for the second read, we can look in the AR. If there's questions about the AR, we can address them now. I just think that admin probably needs one more opportunity to go through it just to make sure all the specifics are correct.
And most, I think all of what's here, we currently do.
Yep. Okay.
We don't, this is the first time we have a definition around undue hardship. Usually when we have our ADA meetings, kind of
up to administration and our consultation with you, whether or not it's an undue hardship. So this is the first time I'm actually seeing us have something in the policy. I don't know if that's good or bad.
I think it guides the, that language was based on, legal interpretations, case decisions, decisions from employment agencies. It's not language that we just made up, for purposes of this AR.
So will the policy be listed for first reading? Okay.
Yep. And if the AR is ready to go, that can move forward as well. There's just a lot of new language. I want to make sure Ms. Tolbert has a chance to review it, but it sounds like it's good to go.
Any other questions, comments? This one, oh.
Yes, I just want to check for understanding about the purpose of this policy. As a practice, we have been doing uncompensated leave in case-by-case scenarios, and this codifies it as a policy the district undertakes. So we have written down understanding of what that entails, correct? Is that
Correct.
Any other questions or comments?
Right, next is 828. 828 is the district-wide safety policy. We have one in the policy, just one minor clarification, which is not an operational change here, but a year or so ago, school code changed to require school districts to have at least one full-time security officer on duty during the school day. So we just added the as required by law provision to the policy. And then when we go to the AR, you will see that that language has been added. The district has for years and years had someone employed, so it's not an operational change. In the AR, there are also some additional changes that also were made to state code around the timing by which the school safety and security coordinator, which is Mr. White here, goes through training. Again, these aren't going to be new changes because they're things that have already been in place. And we're just bringing the policy in the AR up to reflect the current language of the statute. You can see under school safety officers, that was the main reason we brought this under review. As required by law, the district will have at least one full-time properly trained school security personnel on duty. It's really the only change there. The committee might remember a number of years ago when we created this policy, 2018, we collapsed a lot of other policies that were safety related. And it was around that time that the district created like a safety landing page on their website. And so all the safety information is on your website in one place, and it's in your policy.
Thank you, Mr. Diazio. Mr. White.
Under, we didn't do, preparing for emergency situation and routine drills, the verbiage in that section needs to be changed because now we work on standard operation procedure. So like hold is not listed here. Lockout has become secure.
Where is that? That's in the AR?
In the AR, yes.
Okay. And, all right, that's fine. I'll catch up with you after the meeting.
Okay.
Put it out. Does that work? Or we can do it now. Make the change, right? You're under preparing. Okay, so which ones come out?
It's just these, we need to add hold.
Okay.
And then lockout becomes secure. I can give you the information.
For the
and I would love to email it to you.
yes. I would similarly love that. And the policy can move forward, because these are just AR.
Just a quick
Yeah,
point,
sure.
really, that, just legislation, last session, there was a bill to say that security officers needed to be armed. And so that's something that did not pass, thankfully. So I wanted to mention that. That's an update we don't have to make this year.
Sure.
Hopefully not next year.
Thank you, Mr. S. We're all set with that.
Everybody's good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's go to
317.
Yes, this was more of a routine review. PSBA had put out recommended revisions to this policy. Wanted to add the information in the policy about the superintendent being able to receive information from the TIMS system, which is the information management system for teachers. So there are times when if a teacher has committed offenses that would preclude their employment in public schools, that system now affirmatively pings their employer. So we revised the policy to contemplate that may happen from time to time. And we added some language around just procedurally what would happen in cases of demotion and dismissal, due process language for employees.
Any board comments or questions about this policy?
Quick, intention terminology question. Number 13, the word carrying on, the word onto was removed from carrying onto or possessing. And I was trying to think of what that functionally might mean in terms of a change. And I guess the question is, or if a staff member carried a weapon onto the grounds, set it somewhere, is no longer possessing it, but brought it onto campus, is that no longer covered by this policy by removing onto? Or
Well, they would have been in possession at some
and
point.
that's all. Great, thank you.
Good point.
Any other board comments or questions? Lindsay?
My question is about the inclusion of the TIMS information.
Mhm.
Does the superintendent or like any hiring body also receive notices like from a potential employee? Like, is that that he would only receive information of currently employed?
So you get clearances and background checks upon employment.
Okay, and so anything that would come through TIMS would show up
Hopefully.
during those.
We require new hires. The criminal record checks have to be less than 1 year old. Also, we can pick up things through our Act 168 that we send to schools. That has to do with protect child abuse. That has to be sent to any employer that they've worked with children. And usually we can pick up information, but I can't say that we may not have something if it happened very recent. Something happened a month before the person was hired, it might not come up. But they fill out a form that requires them to tell us that information.
And if they don't tell you and then you find out, then you then discipline.
We determine it.
And the continuation that would be that if it happened in that short period of time and we hired them, it would eventually come through and paid. It would just be delayed, so,
Yes.
but it would get dusted. Okay, thank you.
Any other board questions or comments? I should be saying if there's any comments from the public too, I'm sorry. Or if there's anyone online.
Let me see, is anyone online?
It's just us. We don't have any comments.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think we're okay with that policy. We're halfway through, folks. Halfway through. We're good.
Couple of them should go past 700 series. 320 is the next policy. There's a title change there that PSBA recommended. I believe the policy was freedom of expression previously. They recommended that changing that to speech and expression. Clarify and these recommendations that you're seeing are the PSBA recommendations. This was one where the PSBA template recommendations that came out were, in my mind, were good suggestions. As you might suspect, there are challenges to the scope of an employer in the public sector to regulate the conduct and speech and expression of public employees. And whether or not you can take action in a particular situation is very fact specific, right? It depends who is speaking, what topic they're speaking about, whether their speech is relevant to their job duties or not. Sometimes it depends on who else is around them, whether they're around children, whether they're not around children, whether it's in the break room. So it's a policy that unfortunately has to be very fact and circumstance specific, but there are some general guidelines that we can kind of set that you can't speak or express yourself in ways that interfere with your ability to do your job, are disruptive to the school, disruptive to the learning environment. Those are the types of general categories you're seeing as prohibited.
Any board questions or comments about this policy 320? Dr. White?
Sure. There's the paragraph that starts in situations where an employee is not engaged in job-related duties, and there's a list of 4 things there. The word in number 2, the word loyalty. I understand confidence, but I'm wondering if I could understand, is this a copy paste from the SBA or is this like
these revisions to 320 are PSBA recommended language, but I can go back and look at they give you sort of a summary of why.
Sure.
If there's questions around that, I can bring that back. That would be an easy change that can be made to like delete a word.
Yeah, and the loyalty part to me implies like a social obligation more than a professional obligation. And so to me, the confidence part makes sense. And there's already things in here about the superior direct report relationship.
Sure.
That I think speak to the professional relationship.
I don't have any concern with taking the word loyalty out. I don't think that ties our hands in any way that we don't want our hands tied. I think it can come out. To your point, I think it's addressed. What we needed to address is addressed. So if there's a desire to take that word out, I agree. It sounds words a little bit odd.
Yeah, it's just an odd choice.
Yeah, my guess, right, is that those 4 criteria probably came out of support case.
Yeah.
Right, they're just taking the language directly from that. Because it's very vague. I mean, what does it mean to speak so that you're impairing discipline by superiors or harmony among your coworkers? I mean, that just feels like.
And the lawyer answer, right? Is it depends.
It depends.
Right.
You know, that's wishy-washy stuff there, but
So we'll take
Well,
out
you'd
the.
still have to be bound by employment law anyway, and so there'd have to be.
Sure.
And then the collective bargaining agreement and all of the pieces.
Any other board?
Seven twelve is next. That is the service.
We all came for.
Yeah. Yes.
Should be disruptive to instead of cooperative staff. Actually, that's from. Never mind.
Back to the,
Catch me at the end of the meeting, so.
back to the 20.
Yeah, I think it's the last.
Yeah.
Maybe
Wanna go back?
And bullet three
Wanna go back to
on
20?
last list. So
Yes.
scroll, I'm sorry, it is in 320. It was just, if you scroll down. Number 3, refrain from the second list, going all the way down. Refrain from expressions that are disruptive of cooperative staff relationships should just be 2.
Oh, it should be 2.
This should be 2.
All right, give me a second.
I got the wow approval. It wasn't colored, so. If you can change it, whatever, you don't need to do it then. I can even email.
Now we're on to 712. Urban animal.
Yeah.
This is where a policy.
Oh my, sorry, Matt.
I just personally have a problem with that. It has nothing to do with
Can I-
work. I have a problem with it.
Can I ask why, can I just ask why, or how, like, what? How did this come to
So,
be?
so that is current law.
Wow.
Around the miniature horses, yes.
Is there, like,
That was an
is, was there a, is anyone else like, was there a lawsuit? Like,
What's that?
is that, like, was there some kind of lawsuit that, right? that-
So the ADA has provisions in it regarding miniature horses. Yes.
Do you know if, like, I'm just so, I'm so
Intrigued by
bewildered and intrigued, like, do you know numbers on like how many service miniature horses are there in public schools
I
in
have.
Pennsylvania?
Yeah, I don't think we need to spend.
I
I don't know, yeah, issue that we have to consider.
Sounds like you have a
I
relationship.
just come-
That information that is available to the public.
You can find out.
That could be an email, that could be an email.
Let ChatGPT, I'm sure it can answer that question.
Oh my
Yeah, I'll look it up at a free rate.
Sorry.
And the inclusion of this expansive definition of service animal, it says, not only does it tell us what a service animal is, but by the absence of other language, it tells us what a service animal is not.
Yes.
So we want to bring an animal that's not,
Alligator.
right, part of the ADA.
Like,
Go on.
I'm sensing there's questions, comments, Ms. Mulher.
I guess that's what my question is, so, because it used to read as any animal defined as a service animal, and so this is defining it, and it starts with any dog.
Yep.
And then it talks about miniature horse, and it doesn't talk about other animals. Right, so
Correct.
those are the only two kinds of animals that we
Correct.
would need to allow to be on a campus.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I did have a question about that, defining service animals and each dog, because that's where I went down the rabbit hole of trying to figure out, putting the miniature horses aside.
Well, there is a provision in there, in that paragraph that talks about additional service animals, what would constitute. You see, it says the provision of emotional support, well-being, comfort, and companionship. does not constitute work or task,
Right.
blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
The
Right.
law makes a distinction between psychiatric service animals
Yes.
and
Yeah.
emotional support animals. So it does
Right.
give some context to that.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand if whether or not there's another type of animal besides a dog or a miniature
I
horse that could actually be a legitimate service animal. I couldn't think of any. But
And to the extent that the law ever recognized that as a right, we have policy that would require us, right? Because we're required to offer accommodations to the fullest extent that the law permits them. Under current ADA law, this is what is required.
Not
His own
constitute,
person,
right.
right.
Somebody's
Somebody's gonna come up with a service dog. just
Well,
saying.
and I guess that
Just deal.
in some ways that helps because it seems like you can ask
Yes.
for the documentation, but
Right.
you can make some common sense. I know common sense, right? But is relevant. But it seems like there is some leeway to say like, no, this is master service animal. It written in here without
The whole
actually having
restrictive-
it. Yeah. It seems like there is some gray space that's allowed in the policy.
Sorry, one other just thought or question or whatever is, so the animal, the service animal does not need to be certified, like it doesn't feel like we have any.
So our
Yeah.
ability to request documentation is very, very limited. You'll actually see in the AR, there used to be language in there around requiring proof of immunizations and things like that, which we're not allowed to ask for. So it was taken out. I mean, it was in there before, but you can't even ask for.
And there's no, I guess there's no limit on like size of a dog either. Although it looks like there are size limits for the miniature horse.
Correct. So, but there is language around. Find it.
Is it in the area?
It's around that, like the animal can't present a danger.
In the policy? I have the AR up now.
Just incredible.
Yeah, the size via is, there's no guidance
Right,
on size for the dogs, correct?
Okay.
Do we currently have any students or employees using service animals?
Do you have an employee? Do you have one?
Okay.
Okay.
And I guess this, sorry, do one other thought, and that is, like our library offers read to the dog kind of opportunities for kids. I know that there's one at Elkins Park Library. I'm not sure about Glen. Would this, if a program wanted to bring an animal for that kind of a visit, like a school visit, would that also fall under this, like permission? Or
It
no?
would not fall under
Okay.
712, and I think we have policy that generally says you can't have animals on school property unless
Okay,
for those very reasons.
got it.
Yep.
Oh, for outdoor, no, did it, that's.
One of the other additions here at the end of the AR was the language around surcharges. That came out of case that you can't surcharge, you can't charge more for people to come to an event, for example, because they need to bring a service animal.
Any other comments, questions, anything wonderings?
Just one quick, checking for understanding, this does mean that any other public event, the only two types of animals we would consider having as service animals are dogs and miniature horses, and there's nothing else we would consider, correct? Not like okay. Just check.
Mr. Schultz?
this is truly a policy versus AR question. It was noted that the previous policy delegated definition to the AR. This is now codifying in policy, which means it's going to be harder to update in the future. Was there a legal benefit to defining it in policy as opposed to?
I think the thought was in most of our policies, in all of our policies, definitions are usually in the policy. And since our practice is to look at the ARs anyway, that's why it was. I suspect actually that when this policy was last looked at, adding a definition for service animal is probably an afterthought after the policy had already gone for a first reading, and the thought was just drop it in the AR and move it next time.
Thank you, Mr. Young.
Everybody good?
Yep.
All right, 701, this is just a routine review. We are, with our routine review policies, we're up to 2018 and 2019 generally, so we're doing pretty good there. Our goal that the committee a couple years ago set for us was to have very few, if any, policies within 10 years. So we are a couple years ahead in a lot of ways. This policy looks like it's new language. It's not. Most of the language is exactly what was in the policy before. But this policy, given that it's old, it was when we tried to redline this policy, it had been copied and pasted as like an image file or something, and it was very difficult to edit. So that's why you're seeing new language, but it's very similar to the language that was there previously.
Any board questions or comments? Nope. Okay, thank you, Mr. Biagio.
And similarly with 704, also just a routine review. No real changes to the policy other than some non-substantive changes. And similarly with the AR, nothing really substantive. The most substantive of the changes has been the update from the director of facilities is just on an as-needed basis. Sometimes that happens more than annually when you're in like a period of active construction or active facilities planning. Sometimes when you're not annually or sometimes even less frequently is what you'll see. So we just left it as periodic on an as-needed basis. The board will have all of it.
Mr. Schultz.
Absolutely pedantic, and I'll fully admit it. Periodic to me means regular and consistent, whereas as needed means the opposite of that. And so I would suggest we take out the word periodic and just say on an as needed basis. Okay.
Everybody agree?
Yeah.
Change. Are you okay with 704 now? We've got 810. Let's have a look at 810. Because you have 810 was sort of at that, 2018, it was 120.
Oh, the other agenda says policy 323.
Oh,
we did that one, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
So with 810, we thought it would be helpful to look at this one, given that we're at the start of the school year, given that you have a new supervisor of transportation that just started and wanted to make sure that our policy was strong. No real structural changes to the policy. Some of the language that you see struck regarding diesel powered vehicles is simply because that language moved to the AR.
Any
board questions or comments, Dr. Whiting?
Did we get it?
Number one,
Right
under guidelines in A10.
Yep.
That changes it from K to 6 to K to 5, which means that when we change this, I'm sure it's not for this year because we've already done our policy for Cedar Brook East. Next year, Cedar Brook East, then that would require students at Cedar Brook East within 1.5 miles to walk to Cedar Brook East. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. I'm slightly concerned about the walkability of that site in particular. In general.
Because one is there's a lack of sidewalks.
Right.
Yes.
It's very busy.
I have been 1.5
Is that
miles
what-
to Cedar Brook
what
East,
road?
and my kids could not get there.
Ashford Road.
Yes.
So those, I
I
can.
You'd have to cross church and New
Because
Second.
the way you
Those
come
are
up.
probably designated as hazardous, would be my guess.
Yeah.
And does anyone know, are there students currently walking on those roads?
We would
But I don't know if they're
But not-
by choice or by, there are students
Every
who
once
walk
in a
to
while,
that.
I'll see kids
to that
walking
site.
that, but it's not like I see them every day, so that might be the day that they're late for school.
You
or
would know
parents
because
that
it would be, everyone would.
No,
Yeah, no,
there
it's
is
not.
one,
It
there
isn't. Yeah.
are students who choose to walk to that
Right.
site that can also, that are bused, but choose to walk sometimes because.
Right, so generally when you're within the distance, like there are times when you have to transport
Yes.
1/10 of a mile if the road is hazardous.
Yeah.
Most of those roads are, I would suspect, would be deemed hazardous.
Yeah.
And now that I'm thinking about it, I think there are bus stops much closer than even half a mile from
Right.
Cedar Brook East.
Yeah.
That there are students being picked up that. I just wanted to flag it in case. I wasn't aware of them.
I know, I
Yeah,
started
let's
to look for
confirm.
the
I think that's a
exception
good
of
idea.
that. I don't know.
Because I don't know if there's a hazardous, yeah, I wasn't aware of that.
There's a
Some of the area is hazardous depending on where they're located and where they have to walk. On our sidewalks.
When we was there and my child went to BP and he was supposed to, he would have been in walking distance, but it was hazardous. There was bus route. But it took so long. He was like last on the bus route for him to go less than a mile that. Well, something. Sure, but it was off.
There are a disproportionate number of hazardous roads in Cheltenham because of the number of busy state roads without sidewalks.
Right.
Or walkways aren't.
Yeah, so I guess my concern would be functionally, what would that actually change to make it? Because that makes sense at Cedar Brook. Like, because I think there's, nothing would change, right? Like, we know what the transportation patterns are at Cedar Brook. But this would change the transportation pattern at Cedar Brook East. A half-mile radius larger, if that changes anything at all, because it may not. That might be something. For 1 year, for next year.
Number 6, that's a plural students experiencing homelessness.
Students, yes.
Any other questions or comments? I just have a small wording change also, we're up underneath guidelines again, like number 3. Yeah, number 3, where it refers to students with section 504 service agreements. I think that should be either section 504 accommodation plans or chapter 15 service agreements. It just is, I don't know, like the one is, the federal way to refer to it as section 504 plan, and the other one is the state way to refer to it.
So we could say section 504 plan.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I don't think anybody calls it.
I see it in 2 locations. Do you see it in more?
No, it was just that number 3 part.
Mr. Schultz?
Just wanted to, that line on item 7 where we added in advance. I don't, that might be worth quantifying what that intended as. I think I read that as intended to make it clear that you can't send it to the principal and then demand it be followed immediately, but this doesn't necessarily explain what in it 7 days in advance, in advance of the start of the school year.
So the issue is that it can change, and they do change because custody agreements change. What in advance means is that it can't be that the child comes to school and says, I'm going to this house today, I'm going to that house today. It has to be something that the school receives in advance. It isn't coming from a child or it's not documented somewhere.
Any other questions? Great.
I just wanted to note that in the AR, it does talk about the hazardous walking conditions, just since we
Yeah.
discussed that, I thought the state has some hazardous roads and those are exempt from it. It seems to me like it's covered in there.
And I'm really glad to see a lot of, idling, like some idling guidelines also in there, so.
And those are dictated by statute, and we included, I know it looks like a lot of detail, but we wanted the document to be helpful. If someone needed to refer to it, particularly as there's some folks in the department.
It may be, like reading number 1 again, it may be easier just to keep it K through 6, since it's only one more year anyway. State bus routes and switch grade levels. And change it to the new grade system.
We can bring this back in a year, so if the desire is to
change
leave
it,
it, it's
so that it
now.
aligns with the new grade
Sure.
system. Since we've already done the bus schedule for this year, that's more of an option.
Okay, just leave that. K to 6.
Yeah.
Great.
Now,
I do actually.
I'm dreading it. I'm not gonna hear pensively.
With that, our next meeting.
Oh,
that's why you-
I did like this, I was like.
So just to frame this, and Dr. Scriven can want to chime in as well. We haven't made any changes to this document since the board had questions previously. I think the thought was the board was going to create some sort of committee with a combination of support members and some staff members, and that this needed to be further refined by a smaller group that could then make recommendations to the larger policy. So I think Dr. Scriven didn't want to lose sight of this, so we put it on the agenda. But it probably wouldn't make sense, I would suspect, to go through all this language because we acknowledge this language is unchanged, and the board wanted to have some discussion. Did I say that right?
Yeah, so we wanted to work collaboratively on this with members of designated members from our central office team. That is why Ms. Garman is here. We've identified Tammy Flood. I know that Mr. Schultz was going to take the lead from a board perspective. And I don't know who else potentially wanted to assist. So if we can establish the committee first and foremost, then they would take the charge or the lead with reviewing policy in question. Dr. Savage, I know there were some pieces, and I know Ms. Garman just came back in. with respect to items that we're rolling out with faculty and staff as well. Does that work have any implication to this potential policy that we're considering trying to review?
Well, the technology department, in consultation and partnership with the Office of Education, did purchase a district site license for Magic School through the MCIU. Magic School is a wrapper program, and the intent was for us to begin to train teachers now so that we could thoughtfully implement whatever policy the board comes up with in the future, and we would be prepared to do so when that policy and the AR are actually finalized. So that training mechanism and process has been put in place, and we started with some, I guess, acculturation for our teachers and introductory training in the last couple of weeks of August when we were doing our teacher professional development.
So, Ms. German, we're at the point where we need to put together something. I know you're aware, Tammy Flood would also be, so would it just be the two of you from our side of the shop right now? Are there any other individuals, teachers?
We would, with permission, include to regulate a variety of levels, and then board members.
Okay, so I think there needs to be a follow-up meeting that we can set, where we really lock down the who and the timeline. I would think that this would be something we want to bring back in October.
Yeah, we can, if that's enough time. Sure.
Even if it's just an update of where we are in the process.
It's just, I was just gonna say, to the extent that my involvement is helpful, I would donate my time. I love this topic, so if my help on that committee would be helpful, I'm happy to discuss this, and maybe can help set roles and
Operationalization question between now and October. So there's policy, there's the administrative regulation. And pending, strikes me there could be two separate parallel conversations that are going on. One is more of that policy level, and that is where a board member would be involved. And then there's the AR level where I'm not sure it would make sense for a board level, a board member or set of board members to be involved with those. And then the flip side is, it may be that faculty makes sense in the AR conversation, but not as much sense in the higher level policy.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I agree, and that's what we flush out when we come together to meet, to identify who we need representing,
So
which track.
So the immediate next step then is you would be convening a conversation in the next week or so of on the board.
Well, let's put that out there now. I know you are.
I'm happy to talk about it.
Interest behind it after our PSBA fund.
You're raising your hand.
Anyone else?
I think we originally said the three of us. Yeah.
So.
Then you keep it small.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the committee- Right.
Otherwise, not everyone was there. We decided.
True.
Is there anyone that is a burning desire or passion that's on the board that's not reflected in the three?
Oh, okay.
So I'll coordinate a meeting. It does not have to be in person. It's whatever works with whoever's schedule. We'll start to facilitate that tomorrow because it's time sensitive and we want to get it moving. Stayed on this evening just for this. Was there any things specific?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Let me check for any questions.
Oh, my laptop, I like
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna
It's all together.
Apologies, nothing to do with college. Thank you, all right.
Yep, everybody all set there?
Yeah.
All right, so the next policy committee meeting will be October 28th.
That may,
We may have to circulate a revised date for that, but it's Tolbert Jackson that I said something.
Okay, all right, sounds good. Noted.
But it's the second half of October.
Okay. Thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay.
Only have
Second, Dan, you good?
All in favor?
Oh, I missed it. I was thinking.
Meeting is.